we'll call the meeting back to order, and I'll have the committee members introduce themselves if they might. Chris?
Good morning, Chris Pearson from Chittenden County.
Hi, Anthony Polina, Washington County.
Brian Collmore, representing Rutland County.
And Corey Parent from Franklin County and Alberg.
Yeah, and I'm Bobby Starr, representing Essex, Orleans County, a little bit of Franklin County, and one town in Lamoille County. It's a pleasure to have you folks representing Agri-Mart with us today, and so we can learn a little more about how things are going at Agri-Mart. And it's great to see Margaret. You employed Margaret, so and she's an old friend of the committees. Spend quite a lot of time together, and think that she'll do a good job for you folks representing you. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Margaret, and she can introduce you folks, and we'll hear what you have to say, and then we'll open it up to questions as we move forward. So good morning, Margaret, and
morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you all for the opportunity for Agri-Mart to present to you what we believe will be a very informative morning for you. Well, you'll learn a lot more about Agri-Mart than you've known in the past. We're going into depth on some of the things that make us quite unique and special, and sets us apart from many of the other co-ops that do business in the United States. And I think this morning we'll start with Marie. Marie Audette's going to talk about Agri-Mart's B Corporation status. And I'm not sure how many of you know what that means or what that's about, but Marie's going to describe in detail what that's all about, all of the effort that goes into that, and that it's an annual recertification process, et cetera, and what that commitment means. And then Paul Doughton's going to talk about water quality efforts and how Agri-Mart is working with its farmers on many of the various different, and supporting them on many of the different water quality projects that are going on around the state, including research, et cetera. And then Joanna Lidbach is going to talk about kind of the history of Agri-Mart and where we've come from and where we are as far as a manufacturing company and a large employer in the state of Vermont. So we'll start with Marie.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, it feels like I've been here lately. As a matter of fact, you know, Tuesday when we were chatting, something that Senator Pearson said, I mean, I think it was such a great point and so relevant to how I think we're all dealing with these massive problems that we're dealing with, and trying to combat things like climate change. And he said, you know, how in the past, everything environmental just went to natural resources. You know, everything had its compartments. And now as a society, he said, we're evolving. And, you know, it's the solutions to these complex problems include all of society. And here, for us farmers at Agri-Mart, you know, we've been talking about this word sustainability like since in the early 2000s, before it was really the biggest thing everyone else was talking about. And I think the difference for us is definitely because we're so consumer based. You know, I did a quick survey before I talked to you folks in the, early on, because I wanted to make sure all the other farmers that in Agri-Mart feel like I do. And they all like emailed back really quick. Oh yeah, you know, we don't consider ourselves commodity farmers. I think we're fiercely proud of our cheese products. We're proud of, you know, we're like our own ambassadors. And I think that's what's so unique, because if you go to our Cabot website, you're going to see our farms there. We are the ones that represent our cheese and our farms. You know, it's not a company, it's the farmers. And we started doing that before it was even the popular thing to do. So I think we're really set up well right now to meet the challenges in the future. You know, you talked about food security earlier, and, you know, this isn't just about Agri-Mart, but, you know, if in the commentary that I wrote, Even I'm surprised sometimes to think, we always think about Vermont as so isolated. We ship 64% of the milk, to local markets outside of Vermont. But really, if you look at New England as a region, we only make 50% of our own dairy. And I think that's another relevant factor because, dairy provides 19% of our natural nutrients. In addition to all the open land stuff and to the climate issues that we're dealing with, it's still an important player. So I'm just going to talk, like Margaret said, I'm really proud of this B Corp thing. And I think most people don't know much about us, that we've been doing this kind of work. And, it's back in 2008 when we started treating sustainability as a full-time job on the Cabot level, on the company level. And we were one of the first dairy co-ops designated a full-time, department, full-time job there. And in 2012, that's when we were certified as a B Corp. And, we were the very first dairy cooperative, the first cheesemaker and first Vermont dairy business to receive a B Corp certification. And that's a very rigorous third-party validated process and how a business approaches stuff like transparency to our consumers, transparency to our communities, accountability, and management of our social and environmental impacts. And like my husband keeps reminding me, a B Corp status is not something you achieve and then you put it on your package and it's over. It's something that we have to work at every day, year after year. It's a constant commitment that we have made. And that filters right down to our farms because since early on in 2012, we formed a committee of Agrimark farmers to really focus on sustainability and all the things that encompass the natural, the closing the loop on our dairy farms as well as in our plants. Just to give you an idea, other B Corps in Vermont would be like Seventh Generation, King Arthur Baking. And I think there's worldwide, it's a pretty small number. There's only 3,700 companies that have achieved that status and more trying every day. And I think we'll see that growing. It's a very important program. You've also hopefully have heard about the national effort for the dairy industry to become carbon neutral by 2050. And we at Agrimark we have been early on signing on to that whole stewardship commitment. It just falls in place with everything that we've been working on all along. And I was reading an article about, President Biden's how he wants to use agriculture, in climate issues. And it's like, geez, we've been on this for a decade. So yeah, I do think that Vermont is unique. And a lot of the Vermont farmers are familiar with this conversation and this work. I think we are ahead of the game. In addressing, 2009, we started addressing manufacturing sustainability using a green team kind of network. And that's currently 7 teams at 7 locations that include more than 7 employees that focus areas, research and resource recovery. We focus on energy and climate and water management. And we've been engaged in 45 different projects in 2019, and even despite the pandemic, 21 in 2020. So it's a real major focus of our business. And again, it's because of our close commitment to our consumers. And we've known for a long time, what our consumers want. They're telling us, that they want transparency. They want assurance that our animals are well cared for. And they want to know that we're good stewards of the land that we steward. And we're doing that by really focusing and investing in measurements that can be used by our consumers so that they can compare us to other companies. And here at Blue Spruce, we happen to be, just for example of how this stuff works and how we're so connected, we're really close to the Middlebury plant. So when potential buyers come to visit the plant, they often will come to the farm because they want to see the whole thing. Dietitians, they come to the farm that want to work more closely with dairy and ag. And it's like, the connections that we make are absolutely incredible. And I think it's It's that is what makes us unique. Let me get back here. I think that, that's pretty much what I had to cover for now. And then I look forward to the discussion early on. I love hearing what Paul has to say about his farm. It's always very cool. Go ahead, Paul.
I don't want to mess things up, but I see Joanna is on. Does she want to go before me? So we can have two roses before the thorn?
You're saying I messed things up, Paul?
No, you didn't. I did.
Okay, well, I apologize for being a little late this morning and thank you for having me.
No.
I guess, sorry.
Thanks for being with us. We know you're busy. You're all busy, but thank you for your being with us and your time.
My pleasure. So my name is Joanna Lidback. My husband Adam and I have a 70 cow dairy. Actually, I guess I have to say 80 cow dairy now in Westmore, Vermont, right next to Lake Willoughby and Wheeler Mountain. So we call ourselves the farm at Wheeler Mountain. We have 3 young kids who are learning the joys of taking care of animals and having to be responsible for a farm, especially when hired help doesn't show up or something, and we've messed with their weekend plans or something. But anyway, I am thankful to be here with you. I'm happy to introduce Agrimark and Cabot and explain a little bit about who we are. The Cabot, which we're only about 45 minutes from here in the Northeast Kingdom. Its roots go back about 100 years. Agrimark farmers merged with Cabot farmers in the early 90s. And forgive me if some of you already know this history, I'll try to be brief. But it was really a marriage of two groups that each had what the other was looking for. Agrimark farmers were looking for a brand in order to diversify and not be so reliant on the commodity market. And Cabot farmers were looking to grow their brand. And so voila, here we are now, almost 30 years later. We've grown from about $1 million in sales in the early 90s to just about $1 billion in sales last year. We have 800 farm families across 6 New England states and New York. I should also mention that I do work for a fellow Cabot member just over the border in Peru, New York, Adirondack Farms. We have 152 members in Vermont. We are a grassroots member-driven cooperative, and that means that members have a say in the activities of Cabot and how we operate. We are governed by 14 elected directors who serve on a board of directors, and 4 of them are in Vermont. Along with Cabot, we have 2 other brands that we market, McAdam Cheese and Agrimark Whey and Dairy Proteins. Our products are sold across 125 countries, and we employ 900 people in 18 states. In Vermont, we have 611 full-time employees and a $41 million payroll. We have processing plants in Cabot and Middlebury, distribution in Montpelier, offices in Waitsfield, and warehousing in St. Albans. I should also mention that we have a network of truckers, trucking companies that we certainly rely on every day to move our product from farms to the different processing plants. In Vermont, we produced over 280 million pounds of cheese, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and sour cream. And also in Vermont, our farmer member owners have $228 million invested in plants and equipment. Again, this is to add value to our raw milk product. The 611 employees in Vermont live across 116 communities in Vermont. Now, I'm a numbers person, and I've got a lot of numbers in my notes here, so I apologize. But so likely they may be some of your own friends and neighbors. We also have other facilities in New York and in New England. I have a handy dandy chart, which I think, Margaret, you shared this with the folks? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So I'll spare you, but just to pull out a few details, I'm originally from Massachusetts. I guess you call me a flatlander up here in Vermont, but my mom was actually raised in West Springfield, and Agrimark has a powder plant down there that we've recently added on to. We have offices in Andover, Massachusetts, and another processing plant in Chateaugay, New York. What else can I tell you? Just some other interesting notes as far as production goes. And I think at some point it would be cool to take the per capita consumption of dairy and put this on a person basis, a per person basis, as far as what we're producing and what we're making. But in 2020, we had 3.25 billion pounds of milk go through our plants. In Cabot alone, that made 36 million pounds of cheese and 34 million pounds of cultured product. In Middlebury, it made 72 million pounds of cheese and 50 million pounds of whey powder. At the Cabot Cut and Wrap facility, which is a pretty cool place, we had 78.5 million pounds of packaged cheese, and that's roughly about 18,000 pounds an hour. And I'm just going to add a plug that I'm, as a farmer, going through the pandemic last year and taking care of my cows who had no idea that anything was different, that there's a pandemic going on. I'm super proud of the people who showed up every day to make sure that my milk was made into the products that we're so proud of as well. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time. That's a brief capture of who we are. I'm happy to answer any questions or have any discussion or conversation that you might be interested in having with me. I haven't emailed. I've emailed a few of you in the past, I think. I've been told I'm easy to find out there, which is a little creepy, but I am. But certainly, if you're ever at Lake Willoughby, I get angry when I find out people have been there and they haven't come to visit. So I'm here.
Well, thank you, Joanne. And we'll do questions at the end. So Paul, you're up.
Thank you, Senator Starr. My name is Paul Doughton. I have a dairy farm that I operate along with my wife and my son here in Barnard. And I will comment, this is my Cabot tie. I've worn a tie twice since the February 28th. February 28th was the last time we had an Agrimark board meeting. That's the last in-person meeting I've been to since February 28th, other than Board of Civil Authority in town here. And I was just not to nitpick, but one correction to Joanna's comment. 3.25 billion pounds of milk is the amount Agrimark members produced in the year. About 80% of that went through our own plants. I'm not being picky, but she's a numbers person. I want to make sure she had it clear. So 80% of that goes through our plants. The rest went to other facilities, that aren't ours, like HP Hood and others like that. I will say that she said she was born in Massachusetts. I was born in Vermont. You can tell by my language, my speech. I went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst and was immediately pegged as a Vermonter because of my accent. I don't think I have an accent. It's the rest of the people that have an accent. Back to what I'm talking about. We are a certified small farm operation here, conventional dairy, diversification into maple, sweet corn, snow plowing, field mowing, and some custom round baling. These diversifications have been going on for decades at this farm. And this is what you do on a small farm like ours. Now, looking back 10 to 15 years, most farms were not doing cover cropping. There were small unmanaged buffer strips, if any, and nutrient management plans were new, fairly new, and not that robust. Our original nutrient management plan was created with a grant from NRCS at least 20 years ago. Now we make use of a crop consultant who has continued to make modifications to the plan as new standards come into place. Under the current conditions, it would be helpful to us all if increased regulations were not implemented in the near future. Today, Vermont leads the way in cover crop acres, managed buffer strips, just to name a couple. Nationally, roughly 2% of the land is cover cropped in the nation. In Vermont, about 66% of the land is under cover cropping or no tilling. It should be noted that a large amount of the cover cropping acreage is supported by dollars from state and federal funds. But there is a cap on those dollars, and the largest farms don't get the full benefit, although most, if not all, still cover crop all their acres. I think Walt Gladstone told you that a couple days ago. This is not accomplished without extra management, new equipment, and investments the Vermont farmers have made, along with the help from state and federal programs aimed at improving water quality. The equipment to inject manure into land is available today in the parts of the state where it can be used. In my local area, it couldn't be used because we have more stones in some areas than what injected manure would be able to accomplish. We appreciate the efforts not only of the farmers, but of all the organizations and individuals who give advice and assistance to these farmers. We are all in this together, regardless of our size or our management practices. The location of the farm in the state is also a factor to be considered in the quest for higher water quality. I think you heard that a couple of days ago, and I see you nodding, Senator Starr. We got over the hump on that, and we are working hard for that. I'm noted as the guy who lives on the eastern side of the state.
Yeah, you've got a nitrogen problem over where you are, right?
It's not a problem. It's just a situation.
An
that we
issue.
work on, an issue. Must be you read my presentation. All you know that phosphorus is the focus in Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog as well, watersheds, but over on this side of the state, nitrogen is the focus. There are currently 3 farmer watershed organizations across the state that have continued and will continue to be active in working. I think you've already heard from all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, there was a joint meeting of those groups on January 27th, and we were very pleased with the outcome of that and the fact that we had 115 people on that Zoom. And it shows that these groups are working together. The part agriculture plays in climate change mitigation cannot be overlooked. I think Marie brought that up. Dramatic increases in rainfall can cause soil erosion and loss of nutrients held within the soil, including phosphorus and nitrogen, which can't travel downstream. By increasing the organic matter in soil by 1%, an additional 20,000 gallons of water can be retained in an acre of land. That's a lot of water, just 1%. Vermont leads the nation in the organic matter, averaging 5.4%. When I spoke to the House Ag Committee a 3 weeks ago, I had 4.5, but I think it has been updated and we're now at 5.4%. This is in part accomplished by being aggressive in conservation practices. These practices allow for better field conditions and improved fields for grazing. As we look forward to the future, what new technologies will we see? One I'm sure that will be most implemented is precision agriculture. One of the limiting factors is the need for high-level Wi-Fi in order to plant, fertilize, and spray different parts of the field depending on the soil type, drainage, and other factors that with the advanced equipment that is currently and will in the future be available. Most of that equipment is way too big for any fields I have on this side of the state, but maybe in the Connecticut River Valley, but a lot of it can be done in Addison and Franklin County and is being done. We would also like to put positive words on the payment for ecosystem services, which kind of got put on the back burner for this past year, but I'm on that working group and I'm in hopes we can continue our work. And we're also looking at payment for performance as opposed to payment for practices. I would also say, make sure we don't mess with current use, because if you mess up current use, you're going to find a lot of scrub trees growing in this landscape that is now being protected by farmers. I look forward to further discussion and we'll stop at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Margaret, did you have anything to add at this point?
Nope, the only thing I was gonna say is that I did send you that little tricolor piece on who Agrimark is. And then I'm also sending you a little video on some of the John Deere Precision Ag apps that farmers can use and are using now to very, very precisely apply herbicides, fertilizers, and nutrients to their soil. They go out and do soil testing. They put all of that information into a computer. That computer is connected to the spreader or the applicator. And when they go out, it literally, the boom, individual nozzles will spray at individual rates or not spray at all in areas where they don't need certain products. It's completely changed, you know, how products are applied to fields. So it's very cool. I'll send you this little video. It's kind of cool.
I think last year, if I remember right, we had a presentation or somebody was telling us about the applicator going down through the field and changing ingredients as the soil required. And it was pretty amazing that, you know, that we've got equipment that can do that from a satellite.
Right.
I don't know how many miles in the air. Well, certainly, you guys have a real good story that, you know, that you've told us about in regards to Agrimark, and sounds like you're pushing a lot of product through your own facilities. And I would presume, and maybe Paul or one of you can answer, some of that milk that goes like to Hood or Booth Brothers and places like that, is that for the purpose of being able to qualify in the federal order for milk pricing? Is that part of that story, or?
That is part of the federal order, requires a certain amount of milk to go into the federal order.
Yeah.
So that's why, yes, Class 1 milk, while Class 1 milk is not a money-making product for the co-op. That's why we have the brand. I
Yeah.
would just make sure you people understand, you're talking about $1 billion corporate co-op. 3 of the last 4 years, we've had $1 billion in sales.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of those little packages of cheese.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah. Brian?
Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, everybody, for being with us this morning. I just had a couple of questions, and I guess I'll go to the numbers person, Joanna. I assume that this is true. You mentioned there's 152 farms now in Vermont, 611 employees in Vermont. The consolidation that's taken place in the industry over the past, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, I assume is something that Agrimark has had to deal with. Where have we gone, and has the pandemic made it even worse, or was that really a factor at all? That's my first question. Then I'll go on to the precision ag in a second.
Well, I think it's a great question. And I think that the pandemic did exacerbate certain situations. And I can speak from experience, as I'm a business consultant as well. I formerly worked for Farm Credit. I probably should have mentioned that. But I've got my own consulting business now. Yeah, I mean, as far as the consolidation goes, in the pandemic, I mean, it's, we've had a fairly tumultuous past, say, 5 years. Since 2014 was the last really good year that dairy had with respect to milk price alone. But even still, when I entered a career as a consultant, we were talking about the milk price cycles and riding the roller coasters. And essentially what's happened is the people who figured out how to make the good years work for them and get them through the bad years are the ones who are still here in farming. And there's, I think, other compounding issues that have led to certain farms to sell out. But at the same time, farming isn't exactly what it was 30 years ago. And I had a experience where I sat down with a farm. We figured out, what their break-even milk price was, and they were killing it. They could do it. But at the end of the day, they didn't like what they had to do to get there, which was, the farmer's son had left, and the daughter who was there still had to get another job. They couldn't pay them what they wanted to pay them and stuff like that. So, it's a challenging industry. There are ways to figure out how to make things work. I mean, obviously, if we have a small dairy, relatively speaking, we've been able to buy our farm from the previous generation, but I have to have an off-farm job in order to do that. So that
you.
answered.
Yeah, that's great. My other question had to do with something Paul brought up, but I know Marie knows about it too, and I'm sure Margaret too. One of the things that's become very clear in the state, and not just with ag, but with education and all kinds of business enterprises, is our broadband issue. We don't have consistent, reliable, high-tech broadband throughout the whole state. So I'm curious, when you're talking about precision agriculture, where in Vermont are our biggest challenges in terms of people not being able to take advantage of that technology because of the broadband issue? Is it on the west part of the state? Is the east in better shape, or the north or the south? I'm just sort of, and I don't mean specifically what towns, but just sort of general areas. Where do we need really, really a lot of help with broadband?
So most of this precision ag is actually a satellite link. So it's not so much a broadband issue. So it could be cell service, could be helpful if the satellite link is not there. But it's not so much a broadband issue. But the broadband issue, even though it might not come up so much in precision ag, every single farm, most of their records and a lot of how they run their farm is all on computers. So having high-speed internet connections, several Vermont farms run on robots. Those robots are sending signals to your cell phone, telling you that Joe Blow cow wasn't doing well, or that XY machine needs a new part or something. And so that's where the broadband, and it's kind of a combination of broadband, cell service, and satellite coverage. And satellite coverage in Vermont can be a little spotty, but it's kind of a combination of all of those things that are needed.
But are there particular areas of the state where, and your other work, Margaret, with your EMS stuff, I know in Western Rutland County, we have towns that just don't have cell service. And so when someone calls 911, it takes a circuit, all kinds of routes to get to where it needs to be and then back again.
We have parts of our EMS district where we cannot, even on the radio, get in touch with Copley Hospital or whatever hospital we are transporting the patient to. There are long stretches, sometimes up to 20 minutes, where we have no connection between the ambulance and the place we're going. Or if we all of a sudden needed a paramedic instead of whatever level EMS we had in the back of the truck. So it is a huge problem. And I would say that Bobby knows is great in a couple of areas. I live in Derby, right on 105. I have Comcast right to my house. My son lives in Woodbury. He lives right on Route 14. He has nothing. He has no cell service. He idiot didn't think about building a long driveway before he realized how expensive it would be. Can't even get a telephone service in there for less than like $6,000 or something. And so he's He has
Okay.
nothing, and he's a lineman for GMP. And so he has to wear a pager all the time, you know, and he has terrible coverage.
We still have those, huh?
Yeah, I think he's the
I'm-
only one.
Senator,
I'm wondering, go ahead, Paul.
could I just add that the problems came up with the CARES Act funds that were distributed to dairy farmers and others that required them to send the information in over the internet. And there were a lot of them that just couldn't do it. Somebody else had to come in and help them. So, and that was scattered far and wide, Senator Collmore.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know if Starlink is gonna come along and help with some of that satellite stuff in the near future or not. I'm not on the committee that deals with that. But I know we in general in the Senate are working diligently on trying to get money enough to push this broadband stuff out so that our people, can keep up and do things in an electronic fashion.
I saw Marie was gonna say something too.
Oh,
Yeah, just to give you an idea, we live in Addison County.
Yep.
And we're the fortunate ones that do have broadband. And I just can't even imagine what it would be like. We could not farm the way we do if we didn't have it. It's that simple. Absolutely. I went into the shop to interview my nephew, who's our diesel mechanic and tractor guy. And, when I get ready for some of these things and I say, tell me about the electronics that you're using these days. He goes, these days, a tractor without a computer is of zero value to us. That's how much we rely on precision agriculture right now. We have a digester that, does renewable energy for our community. And that wouldn't be able to be here working at 99% efficiency without broadband, because it texts us, it's smart and it texts us if there's a problem. So a person doesn't have to be there babysitting all the time. The weather station is helping us gather data so that we, can put in our crops and our soil moistures and all that. Everything is connected. And as simple as what Joanna was saying about the numbers and knowing your cost of production. I mean, you need simple software to put in your numbers so that you can treat it like a business. And if you can't do a simple QuickBooks, you'll never know how you're doing. So yeah, it's really vital. I feel for folks that are trying to have a business and have no access.
Thank you all.
Oh, you're muted, Bobby.
yeah, there we go. I'm wondering, you export quite a lot of product out of the country. And are the tariffs or any of that, is that difficult? And on the other end, when you get to the other country, how demanding is the product and is it selling good?
I guess that goes to me, doesn't it? We have been able to maneuver, I guess you would call it, and make use of our group that gives us the information. We have kind of tried to diversify our market so we don't put all our eggs in one basket. China was a big market. It did kind of fade. The tariffs were affecting us. Other countries in other parts of the world have not got such big tariffs. The price is the problem. There is a big glut of powder. There's a big glut of whey, and that has affected the price of both of those. We are able to move the product and not necessarily get the price we want, but we have been able to move it. A few years ago, that was the product that was making us money, and that can't be said right now. It is a product that is moving, but not at the prices we would like it to.
So a lot of the export is dry powdered, and the the product out of Middlebury that you whey, what is
Whey
it?
protein concentrate, 80%, and
So-
lactose.
Yeah, what about the cheeses or any of those products? Do those get exported as well to some extent?
There are companies that export cheese. We do not export cheese. Cabot cheese is a good retail product. World's best cheddar, says right at the bottom of my necktie. And we live by that. And we have had much higher quality cheese being made in the last 3 years. So we have more product to sell in the retail market. This year, excuse me, in 2020, the retail market was very robust. We were running our cut and wrap facility 24/7 because we had to be able to cut it and wrap it fast enough to be able to fill the trucks that were coming in to take orders out to the stores. I mean, in some cases, some of these stores, companies would say they need another 10 loads of cheese this week. It was the ability of that facility to get product where it needed to be down to the distribution center was a monumental task and has been very well handled, trying to keep COVID out of that plant.
Yeah. Well, I hope this weekend you ought to be able to sell a couple of pounds of cheese with the Super Bowl and everything.
That was 3 weeks ago.
That should be a long
3
time.
weeks ago.
Oh, they already bought it.
Oh, yes, they did. The stores did. It isn't about the back of the tractor trailer. It's into the stores way ahead of time. Those guys are thinking ahead.
Well, I don't know about others, but when I go with my wife shopping occasionally, if you haven't got Cabot cheese on the shelf, we usually come home with none and wait until the next time we go and get it the next trip.
Another thing that's been selling well is butter. I don't know if you saw a few years ago, fat is back. It isn't the fact that you're eating high fat products that have good flavor. It's what you do after you eat. If you just sit there behind a computer screen, you are going to be gaining weight. But if you are active, doesn't matter what you eat.
So we're all headed for trouble then, sitting here on the computer screen about 7-8 hours a day.
There's another 16 hours in the day, Senator Starr.
Well, the older you get, I think you sleep a little more. So you got to count, at least 6 or 8 there in sleeping, where it used to be 4 to 6. But anyways,
Bobby, I don't know, Senator Starr, whether you all have heard from Professor Kraft from UVM. She's done tremendous research on the value of dairy fats and type 2 diabetes, that you can control or eliminate type 2 diabetes simply by adding full fat dairy products to your diet. She's done some great controlled studies. And I think these will have, as you know, diabetes is, on the huge rise in the US alone and worldwide. And her studies have really been seen throughout the world as being kind of cutting edge. There were some done in the UK and the Netherlands, and then she redid some unique ones right here in Vermont at UVM. And she has a great presentation that she could offer the committee, but really, really interesting stuff about adding full fat dairy products to your diet can eliminate type 2 diabetes. And it
yeah,
has to do with the very complex amino acids that dairy fat has in them, and that it changes the way your body metabolizes fat and sugars.
and I think maybe, Margaret, you've been in the committee when we talked about trying to get whole milk into our hot lunch programs
Right.
around Vermont, and we're working on trying to get those regs changed a little bit, get a waiver so that we can push that because of the very reasons you just stated.
Well, that and Catherine Donnelly's work, which showed that children that ate full-fat dairy products reduced the amount of empty calories that they ate later in the day, that the protein and fat combination kept them fuller longer, and they didn't desire the sweet foods and fatty foods that they were eating after school.
Yeah, yeah. So, Joanna, what about the, in Vermont, as far as we can tell, or been told, we've lost about 50 small farms, or 50 farms, because I think one was at least a medium-sized farm. But has that loss in numbers affected you folks much at Agrimart, or?
I can tell you very personally the way that it's affected us here is as a dairy farmer, you tend to develop a relationship with the milk hauler, the milk truck driver, the guy who shows up every other day, and in my area, as you can imagine, being nestled between beautiful Wheeler Mountain and Lake Willoughby. While we could take a tractor trailer truck up here, not many folks can. So we ultimately end up on a straight truck route who could, maneuver the twists and turns and mountainous like roads around here. And in any case, he just decided he had lost a few farms and he had lost a few too many farms, and he was one independent hauler. He had one truck, one employee who drove relief for him, and he decided to call it quits because he had just lost too many farms. So luckily, with our strong network of haulers, we were able to get on another route. But so that that was sad by all means, and and he's moved on to something different. But that's how it's affected us quite personally. But I I was talking to a fellow Agrimark farmer the other day who's nearby, and we were just saying that we just wish that we saw more dairy. I mean, we appreciate the farms that are here and that are left. And he and I both actually, we were at the same college and graduated the same year, and he's super quiet, and I didn't even know him back then, and it not a huge school, but anyway, and we landed one town away from each other, but we're here and we've figured out how to make it work, and we just wish that we could help others, which is what I try to do in my consulting.
Yeah. Is your farm?
I just want to add on to that. I think hauling is the biggest factor that comes into that. We also are on a straight job. Our milk goes directly to Cabot, but it takes several stops to get that. And also the business that is generated by a farm in the local community is also something that is lacking when a small farm, or even, it doesn't matter what size farm, it affects the economy, the rural economy, and that's also a problem.
Yeah, that and we're seeing that all over the state. The rural economy is suffering about in all the corners of the state. Joanne, is your farm on the west side of Willoughby?
Yes, and I'm just laughing because having moved up from Massachusetts, we actually received mail from our church addressed to Adam and Joanna Lidback, west side of Willoughby Lake. So that's how I will always know, that we're on the west side, not the east side. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, years ago, when I first got into the trucking business, my job was delivering, setting up a limestone and fertilizer delivery system for our family. And so I spread lime up there on the west side of those farms up in there. Yep. For a few years. Good farms up there.
Yeah.
Other questions for our panel? No, everybody's pretty quiet. But that was an excellent presentation. Is there anything, I mean, you've talked about a couple of things that, move slow, not too many new initiatives, but is there anything that we can, that you know of that we can help you with as far as economic development for the parent company, or for you as farmers? Because, we're here to help, and as you can see, there's not many farmers left in the legislature. But those of us that serve on ag are we wouldn't be here if we weren't interested. And, we like what you guys bring to Vermont and trying to keep our heritage alive and well, and certainly realize that our rural economic situation is driven a lot by agriculture. And so are there any other issues that we could be of assistance with, Paul?
I think you can see from the three of us that we are very positive about dairy. There is another generation coming. Each of our farms has the next generation coming. I have a 2.5-year-old grandson who knows more about what's going on here some days than I do, it seems like, or at least he tells me what I should be doing. But it also, we have all chosen this occupation. We aren't looking for sympathy. We're looking for assistance. And we're looking for the state to be positive, to continue and allow us the right to farm. And in some cases, that does not seem to be coming from Montpelier. And I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that's what it appears to be. And I would like to make sure there's a positive attitude toward dairy coming out from you as legislators.
Well, if you ever hear that and feel like calling, give me a ring, because we don't need that kind of help.
Thank you.
I
Margaret?
would just say that I would say that farmers are very appreciative, I believe, in some of the change in tone around using the carrot instead of the stick for some of the programs that have gone on, the water quality programs and so on, which are very regulatory, but we're seeing that Vermont is leading the nation in some of our results. And the research that Heather Darby has done and UVM in general has been incredibly helpful to us, but they live on, constantly having to apply for more grants and more funding. And so it would be nice to see some of that research better supported. But also I think that the payment for, proof of beating the standards, I think payments for performance, I think it's called, and the ecosystem service payments, all of those kinds of things where you're actually looking at paying farmers for doing some of this work, for agreeing to go above and beyond whatever the baseline to protect the environment is. Those are really making a difference in a farmer's attitude toward all of this. I think farmers are embracing these practices anyway. And I think you guys heard from Heather Darby the other day, some kind of surprising research into whether no-till was better than constant corn, and whether it was spring or fall manure application, and how yields turned out to be. And all of that research is really important to help farmers not only do these practices that are important for the environment, but to also maintain their ability to feed their animals with high quality forages. So, and she's also looking for some new types of perennial grasses, because she's worried about climate change and that maybe some of our cold weather grasses won't do so well 20 years from now, and we need to start establishing some of these new stands. And all of that is really important, but that in conjunction with basically using the carrot approach to some of these regulatory ideas that are out there is, I really think farmers are really appreciative of that in specific.
Yeah, well, that you you know, and doesn't take a farmer to know this, but most of them do, that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And hopefully some of the bureaucrats are catching on to that, and policymakers. You know, it's pretty good when you have reports like 66% of our corn ground is cover crop, where nationwide it's only running 2%. And Heather's research, where she had the 4 or 5 different plots of land right together, you know, that kind of material needs to get published and put out there. And I think, you know, we had, that was a great day that when she presented that to us, and it certainly opened, you know, eyes up wider about the good things that all you folks are doing. Marie?
I'm going to go back again to what Senator Pearson stated, you know, Tuesday, that I think we do need to have more joint committee meetings like this. Because right here, I kind of think now that we're preaching to the choir. You guys have been with us, right? You've been helping us. You understand what we're going through. But, you know, the things that we touched on today, they affect the, you know, our value to society way beyond just what we do on our farms, right?
Yeah.
Where we should be in front of, you know, the technology folks and the economic development folks and you know, markets, you know, the markets that we're bringing, you know, the new consumers that we're bringing into the Vermont. And, you know, there's so much more to us than just making milk. And so maybe that's something we should organize again. We did it once.
Yeah, that, I know, you know, sometimes we get wrapped up in our own jobs and our own committees, and I don't know, sometimes you just don't deal with the other committees, and we know we have to do more of that and a better job at that to get them. But don't forget, we all serve on other committees in the afternoon, and we can spread the word and you know, because when we were in Montpelier, you always had some dead time where you could sit around the table and visit and talk about, well, my other committee did this. And now on Zoom, it isn't quite as easy.
We are scheduled to go before the House and Senate Economic Development Committees this year, and that's part of Agrimark's push, is to get in front of more committees just for exactly the reasons that Marie said. And I haven't reached out to the Natural Resources Committee, but those would be the next 2 stops after we get through economic development.
Yeah, I think that's a real positive place to go. And, you know, they were great during when we were putting the recovery money together and who's going to get how much. They were, because we looked after ag, but they were very supportive of what we did as an ag committee and moved forward with. So
Yeah. That's
great to make them feel like they were part of it, because they were a major part of it. Paul?
One thing that I would suggest, if you try to talk about new initiatives, maybe make sure you get farmer input, and you get input from, if it's milk pricing or whatever it might be, get it from the professionals like Catherine Durand and Leon Berthiaume and people like that. Because it's you really need the input from a wide variety of people.
And could I add something?
Sure.
Just really quickly, I know we're running up on time, but just want to put a plug into, there's a lot of great things that are working well in Vermont for farmers here. Yeah, like for example, our local NRCD district, we've got a wonderful relationship with our soil conservationist who's able to navigate all those grants and what's available. And there's a write-up about our farm on the website and the things that we've been able to do. And it's been really awesome. So
Yeah.
I would like, let's keep the things that are working going, you know?
Yeah, Sarah your person?
Sarah Damsel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she's good at what she does is very, very helpful and very positive, got a lot of energy, that's for
Oh, yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
We're gonna hear from the conservation districts tomorrow, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Cool.
Yeah, and now Sarah, I don't know, I got a call or something from Essex County to go over to one of their district meetings. And, you know, it was down in Lunenburg or down on the Connecticut River. And it's an hour and a half for me to get there more. And I said, well, by golly, I'm gonna go to that. And so I met Sarah, I mean, this was 7, 8, 10 years ago. And then she moved up to Orleans County and doing a great job for our
job.
rural areas.
Yep.
Any other issues, questions, or if not, thanks a lot for being with us. We certainly heard some very good pointers, and in the future, if you have an issue that you want to come before us with, either get hold of us or Margaret is usually on our meetings, from maybe 2 or 3 times a week, 4 times, whatever. But, just let us know and we'll schedule you in, and we'll figure out the issue, or try to at least. So without anything else, again, thanks a lot, and good luck with economic development and there's committees.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks.